A word to the wise. We are an explicit podcast tackling content with adult themes as well as entering spoiler territory if you aren't caught up with us. That point this week would be through section 3, part 3, King. We finished part 3. I think that's it. Crossland's voice is shot, so I'm doing the intro, and I get to say whatever I want because we're live. And yeah.
Through chapter 38.
Chapter 38. That's more what I was waiting for.
It's right there in the notes.
Yeah, I'm not looking at the notes.
Hey there, this is Cross.
And I'm PJ.
And we are Words and Whiskey, a podcast for veteran and novice readers alike. We tackle fiction novels and love to talk about what we're drinking. You should think of us as your intoxicating weekly book club.
I love fucking with you, Crossland. I really do.
I'm fully aware. The rain is coming down in sheets. I am ill, and you are still fucking with me.
Yeah. What kind of friend would I be if I didn't?
Very true. Very true.
A good one, maybe.
I mean, you are a good one, regardless of the fuckery or not. So we can just leave it at that. I am ill, folks. So in case you can't tell, apologies on my side for my voice. I will do as little talking this week as possible to ensure that we get this done. Literally, it feels like the world has conspired to prevent us from getting out this episode this week, and so we refuse to not get it out because we've not missed a week since we started. So fuck that. So, needless to say, today is our 7th episode discussing The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson, Mr. Branderson, and we are going to chat about chapters 34 through 38. And real quick, before we talk about our drinks, I just want to say congratulations to Brandon Sanderson for running the biggest fucking Kickstarter of all time. I think it's like 41.7 million, doubled up the Pebble time, of which I bought and backed. On Kickstarter. So like I have been a part of the 2 biggest Kickstarters of all time, but also just insane, absolutely mind-boggling.
It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. I'm excited for it though. I backed it. I think you did as well. You did the big kahuna one, right?
Right. Well, it's so my thought process behind doing the big kahuna one for us, at the very least, because we're going to be covering those books on our Short Pour channel quarterly as they come out next year. Also, because we're going to be not stuck, but we are going to be reading a majority of the existing Cosmere over the next couple of years. I don't know what time frame I want to give on that because of how I don't know how big Red Rising 6 is or how long it's going to take or whatever. So between 2023 and 2024, goal is to finish through, God, I'm committing to so much right now, but I think we can do it, through Stormlight 5, the first arc. That's all that I'm going to promise though for that, before we do anything else, because I'm fucking loving those books and they're really good, and I'm not shitting on Mistborn or anything, but whoo boy, wow.
That's a long time in the future, bud.
I fucking will be 30. I don't want to think about it. Did I say 2024 or did I say 2025? It should only take us.
You said 2020.
I think I said 2024.
You did.
2023, 24. Yeah, I think that'll be about it, because I started to book them out, and I think we can do basically one of those books a quarter if you don't also have school. So we can read a little bit more and parse them out. You'll be done with it soon. So even when it comes to some of the Mistborn episodes in Era 2, we're going to go a smidge faster. That way we can also be larger and cover more character moments and beats and blah blah. I'm ranting a lot about like what we're going to do in the future, mostly because I'm very excited. So the reason I did the big kahuna bundle though is because if we're going to be doing this for like the next 2-ish years, having some of that swag for like background shit for photos of drinks and stuff, awesome. Great. Yeah, great to have. Fair. In addition to just already the small previews that they gave of things that were going to come in the boxes seemed great. And so I initially backed with that, and I was like, after I see the previews, I'll redecide, and I decided to stick with it. So
perfect. When's that first book come?
Q1 2023.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so a bit, because they're doing final publishing edits on everything and lining everything up, and yeah. Mm-hmm. I want to say it's January, but I'm not positive on that. I think it's January 2023.
Cool. Perfect.
All right. PJ, what are you drinking today?
I've got a drink known as a bumboat. I don't remember if I did it on the show yet. Did I?
I don't know. I think you might have, but
okay.
Maybe no, you didn't do it on the show. You did it within the Patreon. You sent some photos. You've done a couple of them, test runs and stuff like that.
Some test runs. Yeah. Yep. That sounds about right. So this comes out of Smuggler's Cove, which is a bar and also a very, very good tiki cocktail book. I haven't been there. I just got the book. So very well-renowned tiki bar, but they put out this recipe book and just really cool historical book on tiki. It's awesome. Highly recommend it. But the bumboat, 1.5 ounces of lemon juice, 2 ounces of pineapple juice, 0.75 ounces of cinnamon syrup, an ounce of rye, an ounce of rum, 3 drops of almond extract, 6 drops of tiki bitters, and then all shaken. I think it... Oh, no, not this one. So open poured into my little glass tiki mug, and then floated with 3/4 of an ounce of overproof rum.
Hold that up again. Oh my God, PJ. How are you going to survive? PJ is already halfway done with the drink. We did do a longer than average devil's cut, so I do understand.
We did.
But
also, do you see that dark line? That's all the overproof.
Right? Yeah, it's gonna. Oh boy, you get to that last. What are you following that up with?
My back half beer is hazy IPA from Half Acre. I think I had the double daisy cutter last week.
Yes.
So same brewery. Their hazy IPA called Tome. Excited to give that a shot.
That's awesome. It sounds really tasty, and I'm jealous of the bumboat. I considered making something more serious like that, but I am sick, as is very clear by my voice and whatnot here. So what I did instead is I made a classic medicinal cocktail. Not really medicinal at all. There's nothing proven in relief here outside of maybe the lemon and the honey, of which I didn't even use honey anyway, so fuck me, I guess. But so I made a hot toddy with 2 ounces of bourbon, 2 circles of lemon. You vaguely squeeze them out and then drop them in. Half ounce of simple syrup, 4 ounces of hot water, and a cinnamon stick. Cinnamon stick is optional. By no means do you have to. Some recipes include it, some don't. And I made a double of that in my Stitch mug because I'm a horrendous human being.
Boy.
You know? Sicky boy. Yeah, just trying to get through existence. So I don't have a back half beer. I made a double of this. I would like to get back to drinking beer. It's been, 2 episodes at this point, like having a beer, but I have not had a beer in a bit. So not for any reason other than I guess I did have beer at the show that I ultimately got sick at. So womp womp.
Maybe beers cause COVID.
It's not the beer. Yeah. Okay, so with that, let's get into our chapters. We're going to move into the breakdown here with chapter 34. I find this obligator that we're introduced to right away, Norden, really interesting, in part because he is deigned to be somewhere in between like the previous racial-esque hierarchy that existed between the nobleman and the skaa. He's just kind of a normal person who was able to choose the path of a merchant or an obligator, which I think is really interesting because he just kind of sits in the middle in that way. He's really used as kind of this like arbiter of truth for Elend by the end of this section, which is why you can see why I cap-ended this the way that I did, because it's kind of it's the beginning and the end perfectly to Norden's kind of connection here. Or not connection, I should say, but like this man and sort of this arbiterness. That was stupid. Anyway, what do you make of Norden?
I think it's kind of a strange dynamic. Him being an obligator and us not having really any interactions with them since the first book, right? I don't think there's been one. Not one that I can think of. I think we ran into, I feel like there was one in Straff's camp, but we didn't really talk about it that much. There were a couple in Straff's camp, but we didn't, it's not like we met one or talked with one. It also makes them seem kind of meek, right? Like they're like in reality when confronted, either because they lost their deity, which could be a thing of why like they've changed a little bit, or they just always were, but they were given this power vested in them to make all these decisions. I don't know. Without their power structure behind them, they're kind of meek. Yeah.
Cool. We move from Norden, the Obligator, and obviously we'll come back to him here in a bit, but rather at the end. Elend and Sazed, though, share, I think, an important moment here for both of their developments. Sazed says that your duty is to lead as best you can, following the dictates of your conscience. You must be true, your majesty, to the man you wish to become. If the man is not whom the people wish to have lead them, then they will choose someone else. Trying to guess what people wish of you will only lead to chaos, I think. And damn, if that wasn't how I wished modern politicking worked in general, this is just such a good encapsulation of, to me, this entire chapter is an encapsulation of like the Marcus Aurelius quote, "Stop arguing what a good man should be one," right? To some degree. Mm-hmm. And Elend just is that moral paladin, of which I will not drop that terminology. I'm going to get a little shirt at this point, a little sticker, put it on my chest. Elend is a moral paladin. But yeah, I love that quote. I love that idea and that theology, or not theology, that idea.
Yeah. I like how just the way you bring this up, it is definitely an ideal for like modern politics, but it's also kind of an unattainable ideal here in this book, as we're seeing.
Right. It's still so idealistic. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, regardless, I love the way that Sazed talks in general. Mm-hmm. And this sort of topic seems to really, really lend itself to Sazed's voice. I don't know why. It just matched really well, and I liked listening to him in my head.
I think some of that is because he's kind of the personification of religion in a big way, and so he already feels like an authority figure. And so him speaking authorially on something like this just registers perfectly. You would almost expect this scene to maybe be written with Tindwyl originally, but it carries very different weight because it's Sazed, and because he's coming at this, and you can imagine that it's less a lesson to be imparted, more philosophy or theology to be explored.
He even Elend explicitly says, like, you sound like Tindwyl.
Yeah,
here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah. So you have a good point, and I think it's intentional. And I think you're right. Yeah. I don't think it would have just been Tindwyl beating a dead horse at this point. But coming from Sazed, one from personal like connections, he's proven to trust Sazed's opinion on things. And just having this other perspective bring it in the same way is motivating.
Yeah, without a doubt. I really like the sort of exchange that happens between the two of them. I think it's great. And there are a number of those moments that happen with Sazed inside of this chapter. We get big highlights of kind of our big three characters here a couple of times. And I think they're all critical and great moments.
Sazed, Breeze, and Orsur, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. those are our three main characters, yes. Especially Orsur, the Dogdra, as it were. Dongdra. Oh no. Ah, God. All right. So Vin arrives and makes a quick quip about the books and how many people have written them, or how many people have written, rather, before we flip into her perspective and discuss the poisoning of the wells. Once again, the culmination of this, though, I think is Vin's read that Elend is still allowing these people to call him Your Majesty after he's been deposed. This thought is kind of further explored as he exerts influence over Tindwyl, forcing her out of the room, and again, as Vin explores her own thoughts about the pressure he faces as the city's impending doom is upon them. Let me tell you what, I write pretty verbose sentences sometimes. This one is a paragraph. It is too much.
It is too much.
Fuck. Good news, it's going to be really easy to clean up in the edit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think the script show.
Oh. I think what's even weirder from Vin's perspective is that he's only now accepting the term Your Majesty after his deposition. Is deposition correct here? But he's been deposed, and now he's accepting of the term Your Majesty. And I think him sort of facing the reality of being dethroned has shaken him awake to a certain extent. He sees what he actually wants, and now understands what it takes to be that person. Either way, it's a little bit of growth for him, but it's kind of too little too late. So that's frustrating, but at the same time, kind of good on you for like being the man that you should be here. Like it's a weird, conflicting sort of, I don't know, but
it's like almost too little too late, but not quite, because it's only too little too late by the end of this, right? Like that's the issue, but you know, he's aspirationally living to some degree.
Yeah, he's he's using the secret. He's trying to manifest himself, like manifest kingship into himself.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Manifesting himself to be a king.
Man. But this is the section where like Vin talks about the poison wells, right? You mentioned that?
Yeah. I think so. That's here.
There's something gnawing at me about that, in that Elend very clearly says he thought he told Vin about it, like debrief Vin about it, but just kind of writes it off. So either he's just kind of aloof and forgetful and like, I don't know, meant to say it but didn't. That doesn't seem like him right now, though. So I don't know. I'm thinking there's something else going on. I have this weird theory that there's a Kandra like doppelganger of Vin. Like Vin is the imposter as well, but that goes against our current understanding of Kandra. So I don't know where to go in that. But
yeah, okay. I get that. I think that something that's important to point out, especially as we go through these chapters, is that like Elend is having trouble juggling responsibility to state and to people, to like independent people, right? Like that's been a big trouble that he struggles with, especially when we get to Vin and him in the last chapter this week in the courtroom, right? Like the fact that he hasn't even had time to talk to her about it, and he apologizes for all of that. And I think that this is just another one of those notes where it's like, I thought I told you about it, I'm so sorry, you know, kind of.
Yeah, but he hasn't been forgetful. Like that. This is the only time where it seems like he's been forgetful or like misremembered something. Everything else, he's just been kind of scatterbrained and stretched a little bit too thin. But
I think viewing forgetful and scatterbrained as close as a reasonable.
I think scatterbrained was probably a mistake to use as.
I think he's been scatterbrained though, like with the letters and everything else, like not paying attention and then like missing obvious things.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's just tweaking something for me.
Okay. Yeah, tweaking your paranoid nerve, just like it would for Vin on the smallest flinch of something, some injustice or truth. Wow, this thunder is so loud that it's coming through my silencing headphones. Here's hoping I don't lose power, folks. All right, but that all culminates in resurfacing of old emotions for Vin, right? We're talking about these paranoid thoughts, but it's this deep insecurity that she is unneeded and going to be left alone once again. She almost banishes the thoughts entirely before that old familiar nagging seeps back in, whispering, "Leave him first, and that it will hurt less if she does." Friggin' Reen's voice scratching at the back of her head again.
Yeah. I was curious when he'd pop back in again. We've made note before that he seems to manifest. There we go. Manifest again. He seems to appear in Vin's thoughts when her confidence is really, really low. And what I find kind of cool, or maybe not cool, but something to think about. I don't know if there's anything to make of it, but it seems to be kind of... Vin seems to be following an inverse path of Elend as far as confidence goes. She was feeling very, very confident for a while Elend was really not feeling it. And as his confidence has grown as a leader, or as an aspirational leader at this point, she's been kind of retreating. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, they've almost been separating in a professional way to some degree, which is impacting their relationship, right? As Elend becomes more of a leader, Vin is simultaneously having questions and doubts, and Elend is focusing less on her, and as such, those doubts are exasperated, even though it's what kind of the country needs, variously, or the dominance needs, rather.
Yeah.
The city. So, oh man, Reen. Zane is on the roof for just a brief moment before he attacks. And this attack is most certainly different. He's striking closer and closer to home. It feels pretty clear that he's testing her, and that by the end, he's certain of something that wasn't necessarily clear to him before, that they don't have ATM, meaning the city of Luthadel, and that Vin is completely vulnerable without it.
I was honestly surprised by the outcome of this fight. For whatever reason, I was really expecting Vin to be able to hold her own with him, despite the ATM deficit. This makes more sense. This is more realistic of what we understand of the characters, and especially like sort of the headspace that Vin's been in. And I wasn't really expecting, like, obviously I was expecting Vin to hold her own, but I wasn't expecting Zane to actually come in for the kill here at all. Mm-hmm. Like, I figured this would be some sort of test, but maybe a little bit harsher, like we saw. So I don't know what to make of it, man. Zane, he exhibits sort of that floating again this time, and I was thinking more about it, about how it can be done. Does he push off of 2 points, or does he just push off 1 point?
There's nothing to say that you can't push off of 2 points. But I don't think he has things around him to say that he could, or that he does. Yeah.
I know. I don't know. I know it's like a feat of strength and really, really impressive. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, because Vin pushes coins in 2 different directions later in combat, but she's doing that from, like, she's pushing them on either side to, like, jettison them out.
Right.
So that's not... So, like, you can push 2 things at once, but...
Yeah, and that'd basically be the same thing, but if those things are huge and you're pushing 2 things like out and down, you're basically just pushing yourself into like this point, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that he has the metal around him to do that, though. You're right, I think, in how levitation could work, but I don't think that that's available readily.
I don't know why I'm thinking about this. Because it came
I mean,
up
it's a fair question, because it's like, how the fuck does Zane levitate? That's weird. Zane gives an invite to leave, and it certainly is a temptation, but it's one that Vin easily resists because of her love for Elend. We've talked about all of these different struggles and trials and problems here, but Zane is kind of trying to find a way to save her here with this offering, so that he can kind of neutralize the board as Straff wishes. Straff wishes for her to be gone. Well, a way to get her gone is to run away with her, and then the board is even again. The knives are out in their own block somewhere else, you know? But he also... such a stupid joke. I'm putting myself down for that one. He also, after a comment from God, tells her who he is, the half-brother of Elend Venture. And man, is his backstory rough. We were able to piece some of this together, of course, based on what we knew from Straff, previously being an absolute piece of shit and sleeping with a bunch of young women and mistresses and whatnot. But woof, Straff again is trash, especially with how he treats his half-children.
Yeah. First of all, this was a great transition of perspective between Vin and Zane. I really appreciated that. That's done really well throughout this entire section. I feel like there are a few different really great fluid transitions.
It's snappy. Yeah, this section is pretty snappy that way.
Yeah. But there's a moment here that, again, kind of surprised me a bit. He mentioned his father wanted him to kill her right away. Mm-hmm. Like, that's one of the first things he says. And she doesn't react at all. And it's only later that she's surprised in the same conversation when she learns that he's Elend's brother. So I don't know if that's like just Vin not catching it, but it seemed like something she would have picked up on right away, you know?
I think that's a bit of dramatic irony for us as readers, but I don't think it's something that she would even pick up on because she doesn't know that Straff is his father, right?
Right. But if he says, my father wanted me to kill you,
I think a lot of people want to kill her, though. I think that's kind of the thing to some degree, right?
Yeah.
She's just not connecting. You know, what's the importance of your father? Your father could be anyone. Like, you could see where that in a movie context, like if someone adapted this, it'd be like, who's your father? Like, I don't give a shit who your father is. And the reply, well, they probably wouldn't say shit because, well, they do swear in this book. Never mind. But the point being, Net, I see where you're coming from. that is a moment that she could have latched onto it if she would have had anything else to go on, but I don't think she does at this point.
Yeah, that's fair. Just something that...
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. I think it's a bit of dramatic irony for us, although I generally like a little bit of space between my dramatic irony and my reveal, if that makes sense. Not immediate.
Yeah, like a few sentences
Personally.
later, or a few paragraphs later, whatever it is.
That's generally my opinion, but I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think that this reveal is great and does kind of shift Vin's understanding, because now we have this additional layer of her knowing Zane and knowing what's kind of going on with Zane in the back of his mind, and that he's related to Elend, and that Elend got all the prim and proper treatment growing up, and Zane is kind of this tortured puppy of sorts. Which just adds a little bit to that dynamic. It
does. What it also brings up for me is that he is very clearly, like, absurdly powerful. And he's had a long time to sort of hone these skills. So I don't know what, like,
we don't really have average Mistborns to some degree. So
But we know that he is at least at the same level, if not stronger than Vin. And Vin is regarded as, like, the most powerful Mistborn ever. So, like, that kind of gives us a scale.
There's a note that I want to tag on here. It's important to note that back in the first book, Kelsier made it very clear that no one's push or pull is stronger than anyone else's. It's just all in relation to your weight, and that, like, no one's capabilities are stronger. It's all the same.
Stronger,
but
I
there
guess.
are some nuances that make you better.
Stronger was the wrong term.
I just want to clarify, because technically speaking, everyone has the same capabilities.
Yeah. Most adept.
Yeah. Just because you have a tool belt doesn't mean you know how to use the leveler,
You should. Man.
You should. You fucking should. If there's any tool you should know how to do, it's the fucking leveler, guys. Yeah, fuck. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like ground level, that's entry level journeyman shit.
Yeah, that's
not even journeyman. That's novice.
That's the first one. That's intuitive.
Have you ever seen, like, there are several different, like, Twitter threads and whatnot of, like, similar to, like, the bad, like, the down bad text messages or whatever, like, of guys just being, like, super, grotesque and awful to women. There's, like, another one where it's, like, women going into guys' houses and seeing all the shit hung wrong and, like, not level. And man, does that piss me off. Like, not obviously more than the other thing, but every time that you see, like, a dude's room and it's, like, barren walls and, like, nothing there, or, like, the couple things that are there are, like, off-centered and off-kilter, and you're just like, can you be bothered?
Exactly.
I guess I'm just super particular, but, like, you can even see with my skateboard here, it is evenly spaced between the flag and the wall.
Right.
And it's also measured equidistant from the other side, and everything is centered. Like, the entire room. Anyway, it just drives me crazy. This is a great example of that with the leveler thing. Anyway, okay. That's all. Yes. I had to get it out of my system. We're good.
But no, that was a good tangent. That was important. Yeah. But
I don't know if it was important, but it was good.
Vin is regarded as powerful in however you want to interpret that. And a leader among Mistborn as far as, like, accomplishments go. And Zane seems to be besting her most of the time. At least they're at least at the same level. So where the fuck did he come from?
Well, he came from Straff Venture. He's,
And Finn's mom.
Oh.
That's my thought.
You're suggesting they're siblings.
I'm suggesting they're siblings.
No, you hadn't suggested that before. I suggested
that he's Reen.
You toyed around with it. Yeah, right.
I suggested that he's Reen. Yeah, same sort of deal.
Flagged as a prediction. Zane is related to Vin. Makes the whole lovey-dovey thing a little creepy.
I feel like you and I talked about this off air at one point, talking about sort of a family triangle between the three of them.
I think we did talk about that off air. Yeah. I think you called me. Yeah. We made mention of that. Something like that. So in the end here, to round out this chapter, Zane gives her an offer to come with him or die ultimately as a tool to Elend, a knife, as he refers through the stress and pressure that is coming in the form of refugees, as well as his hunting of her. Because eventually he is going to be required to kill her from Strath. Yeah.
In his head at some point, towards the end of this chapter, he thinks something along the lines of, she'll learn soon enough what kind of man Elend really is. That stuck with me because I'm curious if this is something that he knows that we don't know yet, or if it's just the same rhetoric that he's been bringing up before, that like he's using her and she's going to see it one day or another. Like I'm still trying to suss that one out, what he actually means by that.
Yeah, I think that's a hard one to sort out, to your point. It does feel as though it has ties to the rhetoric, for sure. But the question is if there's anything more there about Elend. Is there something that we don't know? And we don't have a clean answer there. Yeah. Do you think it's one or the other? Do you think it's the rhetoric? Do you think it's something else?
I think we've been in Elend's perspective enough that if there's something big that like is his personality that he's hiding from everybody, it would feel like a pretty big betrayal if that just gets revealed, you know? Like,
yeah, I mean, maybe Elend's a Chondra. You had to look into the camera for that one. just to really snipe it in at me, huh? Okay, now that I'm uncomfortable, it's just to feed your paranoia.
At least you said it this time.
Does that make you feel better? So, all right.
If that wasn't clear, I just finished my bum boat. So, back half beer.
Yeah, on to the back half beer, even though we are now in the second chapter of the week. So, with that, we move into chapter 35. With that, we start off with a logbook entry here, 418. But I do so now. Let it be known that I, Quan, world bringer of Terrace, am a fraud.
Is this the first time that we've gotten a logbook entry like straight up repeated?
So I don't think that this is one that was in the book before, in like the tops of these things.
It's been mentioned a few times. I thought it was mentioned in like as a logbook entry, and then it was mentioned as a book section, and then as
it was
a
definitely
entry.
mentioned as a book section.
I know that for sure. And I feel like we talked about this specific note explicitly as a logbook entry, but maybe I'm wrong.
I feel like we've mentioned stuff that's around this a lot because he's kind of pointed himself out to be, you know, like a false proclaimer of the you know, like a false announcer and things like that. But I believe that this was originally read off by Sazed when he's in the Conventicle of Saren, not in one of the headers.
So it was read off by Sazed, and then we got the big chunk that includes it.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
So not to say that it hasn't been said in the book before, but I don't think it's a header. And I did in advance try to look this up and confirm it through my resources, and I couldn't find anything on it repeating. So I'm not 100%. I didn't dig through every one of the chapter headers right before this, but I don't think so. I feel like it's a Conventicle of Saren, and then it was also, again, in the like big rubbing readout that we had last week and or the week prior. Because I think we've had two over the last couple of weeks.
Speaking of the Conventicle of Saren, I was working and listening to the audiobook, and I haven't done this in a while, but I decided to like hop into the Discord, our patron Discord, and like do the live read sort of chat thing. And I couldn't remember what the Conventicle of Saren was called, so I just called it the Inquisitor Headquarters.
Yeah. And everyone was like, oh no.
I think it was Ziva said something along the lines of, that makes it sound super high tech, but it's literally just a cave.
It's basically a cave, yeah. Technically, I think it's a building, but
it is a building.
I think it's a building in a crater, and then there's no light.
It's like almost in a volcano, because there's a hill up, and then it's in a crater.
Yeah. They literally use that term to encompass the word volcano, caldera, almost. It said like the center of the caldera or something like that. Mm-hmm. I recall.
Yeah. But yeah, I couldn't remember the name, so I just said Inquisitor HQ. Anything
on this that like adds flavor for you here, now that we're thinking about it?
I don't know. I guess this sort of identity crises a little bit. maybe not like like outward crises, but there's a lot that has to do with sort of self-identity. And like Vin sort of longing for these dances, and Ellen kind of saying like, I don't know if I could even dance, knowing that people are starving outside the gates. And just all of those conversations. I don't know. I'm reaching for a connection to the sort of fraud term.
I think that's a decent leap, is that it is an identity crisis. There is some kind of genuine crisis here that they're feeling. I don't think that that's that insane of a leap.
But
yeah,
I wouldn't put it that way if I wasn't like pressed to make a connection to this logbook entry, you know?
Sure. Okay. All right. I don't mean to press you
no.
into making a connection.
No, you're not pressing me. But it feels like...
Fuck you.
Fuck you. It feels like when I'd have to do like reading assignments and like note taking for like classes.
I love being compared to an English class all of a sudden. That's what you're doing. It's fine.
No. Hear me out, though. Hear me out. It's trying to find the most like just opening the page to something and finding a passage saying, how can I make this important? And that's what it feels like when I'm like, how can I make this connect? You know, you're not in English class, and I genuinely enjoy everything that we do here, but I'm trying to make connections, and they didn't explicitly jump out at me.
Yeah, I guess there's the question of like, why is this here? Is always like the question with these kind of things is like, okay, is this like a metatextual mystery, or does this directly connect with the passage? Is kind of the question. But especially since we've seen this before, it kind of points to it having some kind of immediate relevance.
Now, that like I just gave that sort of explanation. Did you ever have that experience, or did you always like know exactly what kind of important connections there were?
It depended on whether or not I had read the book, actually, or if I was just opening it up and then drawing connections with like a chapter of context.
Okay.
Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah. That
depended on whether or not I actually read the book.
Okay. Fair.
Yeah. I'm not saying that I didn't like just look at a couple of pages and then make up metaphorical connections that made sense.
So
ever, because I did that.
My point isn't completely lost on you.
No, yes, totally get it. Yes, I definitely get it. Yeah, no, duh. So, you know, now we start off this chapter with Vin dressing up, and it's kind of this point of seeming possibilities of the combination of her personalities again, how it could work. Ooh, you don't like the tone?
No.
Damn, that's unfortunate. And how... You can just go switch it out real quick. I'll restart the question.
No, I'm just gonna.
You're gonna suffer through a whole beer.
Crossland.
You have 3 more of them, don't you?
I think I have 2 more of them. Notice I said I think.
Excellent.
It's better than the mac and cheese beer.
I can imagine. So how she could show off and kind of be both, right? To combine these sides of her personalities to some degree, or the idea that this even could happen, and that this is kind of what she has to become, as kind of Tyndall chimes in, that her change is exactly what both she and Ellen needs. The sort of merging of these two sides are precisely what's needed for their relationship to progress. Otherwise, she should not have or seek a relationship with Ellen. It's kind of the way that she kind of dances around that, phrases it. That's a little too extreme, but that's kind of what she's poking at, I think.
So I guess pulling back a little bit and going backwards a little bit, we talked about kind of, we were at odds with each other a little bit regarding Vin's dress and sort of what it meant for her. And that gets brought up here, obviously. But you, I believe, posted a question about this on Reddit, and I avoid the Mistborn subreddit so I can avoid spoilers. So I didn't read through the responses. But did you get anything interesting out of it?
I think we did get some, or rather I got some really interesting conversations and things like that about the sort of notes or the thought there. I think that it's hard to not have, when you're posting like a giant subreddit like this and posting a question that's in the middle of the novel, a lot of people are going to assume things based on the end of the book, not that moment, right?
Okay.
And so a lot of the answers I was getting are back looking, not reading. They're reading from the back to inform the front, not reading from the front to inform the back, which is how characters develop. You don't develop the other way. Yeah. I'm not saying that anyone's feedback was bad. I'm just saying that I think that they were looking at the conclusion and giving an answer based on the conclusion. However, there were a number of very also touching kind of notes about the story. We had one comment from A Gamer Draws that I really liked. I always appreciate this part of the story as showing that you don't have to fit within one perceived stereotype to be valid. And that kind of her relationship with femininity was very emotionally similar, and that Vin's journey kind of resonated there. So there were a number of different comments. Some were just like, no, that's not what this is, which is just it's looking at the conclusion, not the progress, or rather not the progression. But then there were it was a mixed bag. Let's put it that way. There were a ton of different answers and different perspectives inside of the space. But
is there anything that I should avoid? Like, could I go through and read them?
No.
Okay. Cool.
Nope, sorry. Especially the Gamer Draws one. I can't fully read that, and I would love to, because I think it's actually really well worded and well put. However, even that, it has spoilers in it. And it's not to say that the community has not been cautious with spoilers, but even the responses that were received, and I tried to make it very clear when I wrote the question that it was in this moment, not the entire book. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to cut some of what I just said out, but because I don't want to just bash on the Reddit community. But it did feel not as warm as a response, because people are like, well, the end of the book, that's not, and it's like, dude, that's not the point. You're missing the point.
Fair.
So
fair point.
Tanks. Yeah. But I think by the end of this, we can kind of see again those two divisions that we were talking and arguing about, right? Like we have the knife and the noble lady discussion again this week to some degree. Actually, I think it's just a big focal point still, even. So did you have any other thoughts on kind of the sides?
I still don't see it as a negative to blend the two.
Okay. Let me be clear. I was never saying that it was fully a negative to blend the two through the dress. I just think that it is also not allowing her to embrace her feminine side by basically turning this beatific thing into something that is utility, as opposed to letting it be. It has to be a tool. Not every spy suit needs to be a cool spy suit. You can own a dress. You can own a suit. Like, not every James Bond tux has to have cool flamethrowers in the wrists.
It's true. You're right. But
and especially the one that gets her back into it doesn't need to be should be the one that isn't the one that's like, yes, even while you're a woman, you are still the knife.
Yeah. We won't rehash all the
we're going to later, because it literally comes up. So
yeah, it does.
It's going to be fun because it's incredibly relevant in a bit. But yeah, it's tough because it feels like she's shunting that side of her personality. And some of that is also like Ellen's fault for not embracing it fully, which gets into the point here with Vin's commentary around dancing, and Ellen's response is kind of juxtaposed in a big way. And you totally get it. You feel for Vin and for that desire to have the dance with Ellen since they've never been together. And you also can understand Ellen feeling like it would feel wrong to dance now because of everything that's going on and the way that he could be putting himself out there. And I would argue, to the same degree that we argue about Vin, that Ellen has a kingly side and a personal relationship side. He's also doing a bad job of balancing those two things. Kind of since Tyndall, I would argue as well. But
yeah. Okay. I felt like it was sort of somber, but at the same time kind of intriguing for Vin to sort of come to the realization that Ellen, yes, gives this excuse of, what would it feel like now? But at the same time, he never danced before either. Ollie was he was consumed by the idea of by reading his books and talking with his friends about how to make the world a better place. The entire, this has been him the entire time. To a certain extent.
Yeah, the entire time that we've known him, but he was known to dance before. And so he does say that in the last book. They're like, yeah, he's like, I've done plenty of these things that are all the same, and he kind of like shoves it off as that in the original book.
Well, he's gone to dances before.
Yeah, but just because you've gone to dances before doesn't mean that when you have a new girl who wants to go dancing that you don't go.
I kind of got that impression from him from the first book, that he would bring girls there and then he would just go sit and read.
No, I know. I'm not saying that's not a good thing though, especially not your girl. You know what I mean? Like not the girl that you've literally proposed to.
I know. I agree.
That's what I mean. He did do that though. You're not wrong. He did do that in the last book.
Like he had the reputation for doing that.
Yes.
Which means he didn't just do that once.
Yeah, that's a fair point. This isn't new to him, agreeing with that. But just on the premise of like, this is Vin. This isn't,
Yeah.
It's Rando true. McRanderson.
It's true. Have they ever actually danced together? Like, obviously not at a formal event, but like just on their own? Has that ever come up?
I don't think it's come up, but they hold fast to this "we've never danced together" thing. So,
yeah, that seems to be in the context of like in public at a ball.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't know if there was anything.
I think it would steal so much joy out of it if they had secretly danced with each other, Like it would seem petty on Vin's part.
How would that steal joy out of it?
No. I mean that it would seem petty that it's like you have to dance with me in public in order for it to be like it's a little bit, you know what I mean? Like it would make Vin seem.
Yeah, I can see where
that's
you're
how
coming
I would
from.
react to that, if that makes sense. Like I don't know.
I think I disagree.
Though. I don't care. Okay,
because they're two different things. Just like dancing in the kitchen is not the same as going to a dance together.
That's true.
They are two very different things, but they're still dancing. And it's clear that Vin is good at dancing. And I didn't know if that was through practice or like recent practice, or if it was just from like picking up on what she knew before, along with her sort of increased aptitude as a Mistborn. I don't know.
I think it's the latter.
Yeah. Okay.
She's not had time to practice. She's constantly she sleeps for like 3 hours a night. Yeah, I don't think she's spending any of that time dancing. I think it's mostly the Mistborn thing to that effect. But she did have a previous aptitude for it when she was, out and about.
Right.
Out and about town. So by the time that we transition away, we're inside the carriage here, and we finally arrive at, I think, Keep Hasting, if I remember correctly. And Set is already eating when they show up. And he's just got this like fascinating charisma about him that I love. Both listening to Michael Kramer do his voice. This was the one chapter that I listened to this week, as well as just the voice, the tone, the sort of brash nature about him. It's just kind of wonderful in a great way. It's obviously very different than any of our other main characters, but I really love it and appreciate it. What do you make of Vin's read on Set as we go through the scene? And like personally, I get flecks of paranoia everywhere. Like she is just absolutely on a razor's edge, ready to snap and come to attention.
I think I like that descriptor, flecks of paranoia, but I think that extends well past Set.
Yeah,
in general, like we see it more and more throughout the section, and it's this sort of spiraling lack of confidence and second guessing everything. But here is kind of where it starts, and you see that sort of paranoid inner monologue, and it begins here, I think.
Yeah. What do you make of sort of Set's brash nature at the dinner itself? Like his, kind of like trying to put them on edge intentionally by starting early, and Vin's read on that being one of the moments, kind of the like wandering waiters and all this. She's almost reading them like microaggressions, if that makes sense, in that form of the term, and she's taking them all very personally. What do you think about that?
It feels unnatural. It feels rioted. But she looks, and that doesn't come up. So maybe there's something we don't know about, but more than likely, I think she's just kind of in a state of panic in general. Like she's wrestling with so many different things. She's wrestling with her own like identity as the tool, and all of the conversations with Zane, and the Ellen she knows is kind of slipping away a little bit. He's changing, and there's a lot of change happening, and on top of that, they're at fucking war. They're being besieged by two different armies,
including this guy in front of her,
including this dude. There is a whole lot of fucking tension, man.
Yeah.
So I get it, but my initial thought about it, maybe not my initial one, but second or third read through of this, I was looking at, I'm like, this feels rioted. It feels like she is being put on edge intentionally. And it extends to later, but she very explicitly looks for sources of allomancy and doesn't find anything like that.
Right. She's not finding a rioter in the room, and she doesn't feel her emotions being pushed on, of which she senses at other times instead of the sort of the soothing, the overwhelming soothing of the Lord Ruler and the soothing stations and whatnot. So you think?
Am I off base with that though? Did you have any sort of thoughts like that your first read through or so?
So for me, it felt more like a regression that we're already seeing in the character, if that makes sense. So it feels more like, because of the Reen emotions resurfacing and sort of the doubts through the conversation with Zane and things like that, to me, it leads me to believe that it's more of a regression on the things that Kelsier tried to build in her more than anything else. That's not to say that it doesn't feel like her emotions are inflamed. I just don't think she's being directly rioted. That said, these are similar emotions to that could be rioted, but I believe it's more character than anything else.
Yeah. Way back, she was so on top of every little sort of aspect of, I guess she was now too. That never really changed.
You're just saying that maybe she let up a little bit.
And now she's feeling bad about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think she's stopped, which I think is a part of the problem.
she's burning out.
Yeah, I think so. I think that to that degree, I don't feel like we're reading it outside of context to say that, I think Vin's been burning the candle at both ends for too long and is now experiencing that directly.
Yeah.
I love that we also get Set's rationale for chasing away Breeze, and that it makes a ton of sense, and his general awareness of Breeze's intentions makes total sense as well. It's fairly telling and points out that Breeze's days of being a spy are done. The fact that he was like, of course I fucking knew that the survive, one of the guys who worked at the crew, the Survivor, yeah, you could throw any of them at me and I would have fucking known. Who do you think I am?
Yeah, that was a pretty illuminating conversation, I think, regarding notoriety.
Yeah, right.
And how widespread it all is. So
yeah. And the little bits on all Rianne and everything else that gets sprinkled throughout here, and he's like, that's fine, I don't care. It's just a lot of those different, yeah. She goes on and says she seduced him and everything else, and it's what?
Yeah. And I think that we know later that Alrianne is a rioter. And we also know from this conversation that he knows that Breeze is a really, really strong soother. So for him to be this confident that she seduced him means that he knows that Alrianne is a very strong allomancer. Mm-hmm. That's what I get out of this.
Yeah.
At least on second read through. That's what I got out of this. I think it was a little bit confused first read through.
Yeah, I feel like it's not meant to be clear. It's not meant to be
yeah. But knowing later on, coming at it with that knowledge, it's okay, she's fucking strong, man.
Yeah. She's talented.
Yeah. I should stop using strength. I should stop using strong as a descriptor because, you pointed out, the strength is the same.
Yeah, right. Isn't that... I find that to be one of the most interesting things about the allomantic power system is that everyone is identical except for the sort of deft hand in which they use things, and specifically in their weight with pushing and pulling. Those are the big differences for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like it.
You looked like you were about to say something big, and so I was you said pretty cool.
Nah.
Okay.
It's a half-baked thought. Nah.
Fair. Okay. So this chapter it's a great philosophical exposition on morality in politics, as well as the question of safety versus freedom, and where does that balance lie? Like, where does the balance there? Which is an old Hobbesian philosophical question dating back to the Leviathan and the nature of man, in capital letters, nature of man being a sort of status, or like a stasis that exists, and sort of the way that things naturally level out. But I adore this little section breaking it down. Set promises that you will end up reverting back to the Lord Ruler's ways, including the subjugation of the Ska. Yeah, I really appreciate this little philosophical diatribe that we have between the two of them, to be having in discourse and whatnot. Obviously, it predates that by a long stretch. But if you're thinking about things that were maybe in the author's mind when there were drafts and stuff like that, this is a part of that. Mm-hmm.
It's a great philosophical question. The answer is always freedom for me. But obviously that gets really complicated when you're talking about an entire populace that you're in charge of.
The question isn't so much freedom or safety. The question is more, where do you balance the two?
Well, it's if you can't have both, which do you choose?
It's not which do you choose, it's how do you balance or unbalance, because you have to have one in order to have the other without absolute...
I think which do you choose is explicitly what Set said. Hobbesian's point is different. I agree.
Right.
But Set's point is, which do you choose?
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to make sure that the nuance is layered in there versus the kind of like just blanket argument, which to your point, the people are going to choose safety because that's what they know and what they understand, which, to your point on Set, I'm thinking more grandiose than that, but
I'd still just slide all the scales to freedom, but I don't know, man. I'll take my danger.
You are a big man and can live and survive and thrive in a big, dangerous society fairly easily.
I don't know. I'm pretty fragile. Let's be real.
It's true. The amount of injuries that you've suffered in your life is more in the last decade. Let's put it that way. Oh, if it weren't for my fucking ankles, you'd have me beaten pretty handily.
I'm also really clumsy and super top heavy. So
right,
my size means nothing.
Weebles wobble, but they always fall down. That's PJ's slogan.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So I guess the core argument here, of course, being just this idea that the Ska, and that he believes that the Ska are willing to revert to that because it's what they're used to, going back to slavery, unpaid workers.
Yeah. I completely see the argument, and it's hard to... My ideals are about me personally. I can't speak for, Ellen is dealing with the livelihood of hundreds of thousands of people, and he is directly responsible for them. That's a completely different thing, and makes that question so much more complicated.
Right. Especially in moments like that. I really love how Set throws down the gauntlet here as well, and kind of puts it on the table as to exactly what he's going to require from Elend when he says, honest men weren't meant to be kings, lad. It's a damn shame, but it's true. That's why I have to take the throne from you. It's just so good, and it's a perfect way to be like, I love what you're doing, but I'm gonna do it now because I can do it better.
Yeah. But there's also the question of whether or not he's an honest man.
Do you think that Set isn't an honest man?
No, I think he is, but he's trying to claim that he's not.
Fair. He asserts a lot and often that he's not.
Yeah.
He instead replies with brash, I think, is what he says, or something like that. Yeah.
But I don't think I buy that. I don't think I buy the idea that he lied 3 times to him during that first part of the conversation. I think he's been very, very honest.
Could his lie about lying 3 times be one of the 3 lies?
It could. But that's still 2.
I know. I'm just
he didn't say that many things before that.
Right. That's fair. That's fair. And he's very good at dancing around the truth. Reminds me in a big way of Euron Greyjoy to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
He's got similar energy there for A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones fans.
Yeah.
Not quite as wild. He's not a wild man, but he does have a similar brash sort of attitude.
Right. I feel like, I mean, it also reminds me of what's the name of, there's a scene, I guess we do our best to avoid any sort of spoilers. So there's a thing in Red Rising, the oracles.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Yep. The oracles.
Yep.
I feel like
that's enough information for anyone.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I feel like that's enough.
Yeah. Right. I feel that kind of dancing around the answer in both contexts. Yeah. So this chapter ultimately ends with the inspection of Set's employees from Vin, curious if anyone is burning any metals, including Set himself, and Elend really pointing out to Set that there is no place that they haven't looked for the atium, that they don't have it, that it's not in the city. Are you with Vin on Set hiding his allomantic capabilities? Where do you land there? Do you think that he's hiding some allomancy?
I'm still with her on that, yeah.
What do you think he has? Well, and you can continue with your thought. It was just
I could still see him being Mistborn. Straight up.
Okay.
He clearly hasn't actually exhibited anything yet, as far as we understand the rules to be.
Sure.
But
yeah, it could be a duralumin misting, you know?
I don't know. But
yeah, sorry. Anyway.
What do you mean worthless?
Well, if you just can burn duralumin, you can't do anything.
That'd be fucking hilarious.
Wouldn't it be awful?
It'd suck. You'd never know.
Yeah, exactly. You never. I mean, what's the point?
Yeah, you'd never know. So there's a couple different points. One is the fact that Auriane is, as I've determined, a very powerful misting. At least, maybe Mistborn. That hasn't been ruled out yet. At least a very powerful rioter, especially considering there's a lot that points to her being really powerful. But also, Vin seems to kind of write him off a little bit in her head based on how Breeze was able to escape. Like, if he was a Mistborn, Breeze wouldn't have been able to escape. But my thought is that Breeze isn't like a big enough fish, you know, to risk exposing.
Like yeah, that totally makes
really
sense.
Reveal that. So I don't think that proves anything. Like Vin seems to be thinking, or idly thinks. I guess maybe she doesn't come to that conclusion, but we're in her head, and that's a thought that comes by. But I think yes, there are other ways to come to power, but this is not a very progressive society, to say the least. It hasn't been for a long time. Like, it is more now, but the Lord Ruler Society was pretty not progressive.
Right.
So to be a paraplegic in the position that he's in, I feel would necessitate something else. Either a really, really strong family, which clearly that's part of it. But he's at a very big disadvantage, and that's obviously his brain's all there. He's able to do everything, but I think in order to survive in that sort of environment, he'd need another source of power. It's sort of my thought process here in my justification.
Okay. All right. This is one of those moments where I would love to chat more about a number of these things, but I can't. So when we get there, we'll get there. I mean, we can chat about it, but I have thoughts on this specifically. I will note them and come back to them as we will. Okay. With that, Chapter 36. We start off with a logbook here. Alendi was never the hero of ages. At best, I have amplified his virtues, creating a hero where there was none. At worst, I fear that all we believe may have been corrupted.
Oh, rub it in, why don't you?
What do you mean?
Alendi was never the hero of ages.
You're acting like he's gotten some kind of despondent child. Some kind of, toddler with a tude.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
A tude. Yeah. You know what I mean. Okay. I mean, yeah, I can feel that. Do you get anything else from this? Is there any, I mean, we don't need to pick it apart too much, but.
No, I still kind of get the feeling that he is saving face to a certain extent. I don't know. No, it's obviously not this section, but there's maybe we'll get into it next section, but I'm still trying to figure out like where all these are sourced from. This one, since have we read this in that big logbook section that Sazed reads?
I don't think so. I think this is still a new one.
This is a new one. So yeah. This one feels like it's actually in Quan's, like it feels like it's in the same voice as the ones that we know are from the log or from the rubbings. Some of them don't going forward, and like keep me to that, like remind me.
Sure.
But this one feels like it's in the same sort of voice.
Okay. All right. So we cut from the little logbook, of course, and then we're back in Sazed's perspective, tending the weary in an old armory used to orchestrate the collapse. He's kind of taking care of this woman, Jean Gendere. Again, damn it, Brandon.
I think
Gendere.
I think Genedeer is how it's pronounced in the audiobook.
Yeah, it's probably right. That's probably right. It's probably way easier than that. I think I retweeted something today that says, despite all of my various studying and everything else, I occasionally still mispronounce things. Leave me the fuck alone. Here's the tweet. I will never pronounce all words correctly or know the localized pronunciations of all place names, but I work very hard to get as close as possible, as often as possible. So I hope that, number one, that will be enough, and number two, that folks might leave my email alone if they disagree.
That's fair.
God damn it. I've never agreed with a tweet
have
harder.
Perfect pronunciation, and if you disagree with me, you're wrong.
Fair. Yeah. You know. Point being, if you disagree with me, just leave me alone.
Hermy one.
Fermi one. Oh, Hermy one. I thought you said Fermi one. No, Hermy one is not correct. That's not even close. That's ignoring phonetic rules entirely.
Honestly, okay. Genedeer, and contemplating offering spiritual guidance that he so often does in moments of conflict or in moments where people are feeling this kind of internal strife. But he's almost certain that she's past the point of needing, kind of quote, old dead gods lending any kind of relief to her, right? Yeah.
And this is just such a fascinating moment.
It is. This is the first time that I've really seen him dismiss the importance of his field of study. Like he reduces it to esoterica in his rationale here. And it's, I don't know, it's different. It's different than what I've seen from Sazed and his like interpretations of religions. And it's still, his rationale is sound. And it's in line with like how I think he thinks of things, but for whatever reason, it just feels like a change.
It does have a little bit of that to it, right? I think I agree with you that there is this kind of change in timbre where it's like, this is such a dire circumstance that this woman is in, having lost 3 children, potentially on the verge of maybe losing a 4th, that he's like, what hope can I offer that kind of a person outside of real physical?
But isn't that exactly where these religions, where religion in general thrives? Is in dire circumstances?
Yeah. I don't disagree. I think that there is a large chunk of that in even some of the things that Sazed brings up previously. I just think that he sees a woman so far deep in grief that he's not sure that any of that is going to be helpful. Like that she's so past the precipice that what she needs right now isn't some ephemeral hope. She needs physical goods to take care of her kid. She needs warm clothing and water.
More food.
More food, yeah.
I've never heard the term esoterica before, but I really like it.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say you'd never heard the phrase to give suck before. And
I also haven't heard the term to give suck.
Oh, man. Every time.
Sazed. Yeah, I think I can see. Sazed has never like come across as tone deaf.
True.
He can read a room. He understands. So it makes sense.
Okay. All right. I love as well the little Sazed and Tynwell moment here where they spend time and Tynwell sees what Sazed really genuinely cares about people and is trying to lend them relief. Tindwyl also flexes her curiosity and demands to see what he ran across two dominances for in this sort of big moment, I think.
So
it's not quite a big moment yet. It gets bigger later, but yeah.
Yeah. It seems to me like she wanted to make sure that Sazed was actually like acting true to his word and was like striving for the greater good of the populace before entertaining any sort of interest in what he brought to her or brought here. But I'm curious where you land on this one, or where I know you have future knowledge. So I'm curious what like your initial thoughts might have been in reading sort of this interaction, because it feels like this is a point where Tindwyl really kind of shifts outlooks, I guess.
I think some of that is the soothing, right, that's going on from Breeze, which is a gentle touch, as we're informed when we shift to his perspective in a second. But I think that's ultimately why we get a slightly different tone from her. But I also think that this kind of marks a moment in which Tindwyl is finally considering the options that are in front of her, and she has now gone and done her best to make Elend a king, and sees that we're not quite there yet. I know that's in the next section, but she's still come to this conclusion at this point, right? Like, obviously we know that in like a chapter, but she still knows what she eventually has to go and do. And so as such, I think she's also searching for a reason to stay, because she similarly believes in these people. And I think she's maybe seeing why Sazed did what he did to some degree. We definitely get a lot more of that in the next section, but that was my first instinct was more one of curiosity, not of judgment or truth seeking, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
because I think those might be harsh terms for what you're saying she's doing, but it's kind of the vibe I'm getting from what you're thinking.
Cool.
Does that make sense?
I can agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense.
All right. But then we switch to this new fun perspective, right? That of Breeze, and we get a wonderful, like, 2-page, just delicious, prosaic explanation of soothing and how it's less mind control and all of the nuances and sort of the touches of it all. And it's more like suppression and scrubbing away others' emotions to expose, the other, emotions that they want to make prominent. I love this deeply.
Yeah. I had no idea that I wanted a Breeze section until we got a Breeze section. Really had no idea of it, but yeah, this was super cool.
It is such a good shift. It is such a good shift in the story, because we've spent a ton of time with Breeze, and so it's just great to get to live in his head for a little bit, and spend this time reflecting on. It's also not often that we've spent time with someone who isn't a Mistborn, someone who has only a single Allomantic ability, and so like to have this interesting and nuanced perspective on a single portion of Allomancy is also something really, really new and something new to fixate on.
And clearly somebody who's a master at it.
Yeah.
And it dominates his, and he sort of, I don't know if laments is the right way to put it, but he explains sort of the position that he's in later.
I think it's a lamentation for sure. Yeah, okay. I think you're right.
Yeah. He laments on where his life has brought him to, in that he is idly soothing people just as he passes them in the hallway because it'll make their lives better. That's I guess why I hesitated to use the word lament, because it was less lamenting about the actions that were taken and more about the fact that he has to,
Yeah, the fact that he does unconsciously. He doesn't regret any of the actions of him soothing, but he does question all of his relationships because of his constant soothing. Yeah.
I think I'm talking before they get to that point in the conversation. Yeah. I think he's talking more about like, where the fuck did we find ourselves? Like,
yeah, that's
we're
true.
Thieves and scoundrels. Like, why am I here?
Yeah. How did I end up here? Why am I a part of Kelsier's plan in the long run? And I think Clubs gets to that point, or sorry, not Clubs, Ham gets to that point too a little bit later as well. So we get to see kind of a dueling perspective there between the two of them, especially since they literally are, even in this section when like Ham walks in, he's like fucking dumb Ham. He doesn't say that, but he's just like, and Ham is here to be a waste of space basically. And I giggled. It seems a little bit less ribby when you're inside of Breeze's perspective. It seems a little bit more like genuine anger. But needless to say, I find it that there's an interesting conflict in the way that Breeze speaks to others and his internal monologue as well. He really does wish to help all these people. We were talking about kind of that lamentation about how he goes through and he passes by and does all these things for people. But like he puts up this tough, not even tough, this prim exterior of which is fairly delicate, but it is very particular and noble and articulate and all of these different words that describe his sort of outfit and outlook on life. And inside, he's really just a softie.
Yeah, he's a sweet boy.
I just don't even know how to respond. When I read this in the notes earlier, when I was on the couch reading through your notes, I giggled at this, and I was like, oh, it's going to be so funny when it comes up, because it's like you're treating Breeze like a dog. Like he's a sweet boy. He's just a little sweetie, Grandma pinch cheeks, kind of.
So he talks about how he might as well have like a pink suit on and like go all out with it.
Yeah.
I imagine him with a pink suit. I always have. I've always imagined like a really, really light sort of rose pink, not rose, like a pale, like a really pale pink suit. Like that's what I've imagined his outfit to be.
Yeah.
So I found it really funny to like see him mock that as like what his visage would sort of lend itself to.
Sure. Yeah.
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 Because it does.
What his outward personality. Yeah, totally. Because it was baked into your head, Yeah. Yeah.
Like I've never imagined him. I know he's always worn a suit. It's always been a light colored suit, like a white suit or a pink suit in my head.
Right.
So,
okay. All right. I dig it. Excuse me. I can't emphasize how much I love Clubs and Breeze's meeting, right? It is so great. It's a fascinating character moment when the guy who manipulates everyone around him gets to be honest in this moment where Clubs can't be affected by emotional elements. Like we were saying, is something deep down that he fears and he shares in this moment. He's like, how could I be married to anyone? How could I be in a relationship with anyone? Because I would be afraid that I would be forcing them to in some perverse way, even though he knows that he doesn't do that. But it just makes for a very real character moment between these two people. And I think it's such a great exploration of character and something that can really only be derived from this very intricate magic system.
Yeah.
Or is uniquely derived, maybe.
True. This makes me truly appreciate both of them to a certain extent. Clubs, in that I've always seen him as this sort of puzzle. He's been this sort of stoic, not in like the philosophical sense, but sort of in the Stonewall sort of like shut off sense, gruff person. And like it's always kind of seemed like he's hiding something. And Breeze, being this expert in like emotions and understanding of people, even without his allomancy, like recognizes that he is he's being genuine always. Like this is just who he is.
Totally.
Which is a weight off my shoulders a little bit to know that like we're to understand we're not missing something for him. And I don't think that makes him like a bad character, just being sort of shut off, but knowing that he's not lying about it is I don't know, relieving. But also getting to see that Breeze is sort of I don't know what attracted to, but for lack of a better term, attracted to the opportunity to just know that he is spending time with somebody because of who he is, not because of his soothing. Is sharing these moments with them in a genuine way in both directions. So I'm with you.
Yeah, I think it's especially great because Clubs originally wasn't going to do this because there was going to be a soother on the crew, because Breeze specifically was going to be on the crew back in the first book. And so it's a great moment to see that they've become unlikely friends because of this sort of honest connection. And I think Clubs even leans into that a little bit, like saying that soothers, despite the fact that I cannot be soothed, you're still a dangerous type of person because you know how to play on emotions regardless of whether you're soothing them or not. And I think that's what ultimately breaks Breeze down to kind of be open and think about this, and really kind of in his internal monologue, because I think they go kind of quiet after that and just sort of sit in peace, drink some wine, you know. Also, they drink wine. Cheers.
Oh, yeah. Cheers.
We haven't been doing a good job of that in this one, but rather in this book.
There hasn't been a whole lot of drinking in this book, though.
There's been a decent amount of wine, but not a ton. Not as much as in the first book. First book, it was like at least once a week, every time that they would sit down anywhere. So there's also a really fantastic reveal here that happens within this chapter that we've already kind of discussed a little bit, that Alrianne is an Allomancer and a rioter who drives up Breeze's emotions and can push on him in a specific way. And man, being in his perspective when that happens to him is such a cool moment of panic on his part, in the way that he's clearly being like, other emotions aren't being suppressed, but one is just getting flung up above the rest of them. The implications stretch much further than that, though, because this points to Alrianne having blended her Allomantic side and her noble side, which again reinforces her as being an excellent foil to Vin, because she is secretly an Allomancer in addition to the courtly puff, and has managed to blend those into one person.
Yeah, I agree completely about the perspective part. And how cool it was to see that. And I think I felt that same way about Sazed's perspective, like retrospectively, because we know that, like, we know about, because he's actively thinking about his feelings, and like we know what Breeze is doing later on. So going back and like rereading it, it's like, oh shit, like this is how that manifests in a very real way. So, seeing that here on Breeze, who should know better, I think, means that Alrianne is very, very good.
Yeah, so very talented at what she does.
Yeah, we talked quite a bit about it before, but like the conversation was set about her seducing Breeze, like this is the point where that becomes way more important. I think his understanding of how strong she is, while still understanding how strong Breeze is. I keep using strong. I keep like that's going to be a hard habit.
Talent.
To break.
Yeah. I totally get inside of this, like the implication meme from It's Always Sunny. Like, to me, there's just so much there. There's like because he says, what, you dirty, dirty old man. He's like talking to himself while she's rioting him and having these feelings. And she's obviously pushing on him and making him kind of feel, I think, guilt, I think is the emotion that's being rioted unintentionally.
He's also way younger than I thought he was. He's 36.
Yeah.
Like, that's not that much older than us.
What's the rule? Divide by 2, add 7? Or is it add 9?
7, I think.
No, sorry, 17.
25.
Yeah, no, off. I was doing 30 and I forgot to add the other 3. Anyway, 15, 7, yeah, 25. Right, okay, yeah, anyway. Fuck me. Yeah, I did 26 plus 7, so 20. Whoops. Anyway, point being, yeah. Definitely still young. Yeah, Schwoops. Definitely still young, but...
Yeah, he's not that old, but dirty old man, like, he seems to think of himself as older.
Yeah.
Which feels weird.
I guess if we think about the perspective of the ska, right, they don't live that old. And so I'm guessing in general, life probably isn't longer than 60 years, 65. That would be probably a very long life. I don't know that we know that many people that are older.
I feel like we talked about that.
Well, because
in the first
Menace
book.
from the first book is like 40, and that's really old. Or like 45, and that's really old for ska workers.
Yeah, yep. And
so I'm going to go ahead and pitch that like 65 is probably end of life to some degree.
oh,
That's not conclusive, but...
No, I would feel like, based on that descriptor, 45 would be like end of life.
Well, I think a ska worker has a very different quality of life than a field worker has a very different quality of life than a half nobleman, a guy who faked his way as a nobleman forever.
Fair. Good point.
So,
and I'm going with 36 based on double her age.
Right.
It's not that
Precise.
Like it doesn't have to be that precise. So we could call him 40-ish and probably be fair.
He could also be 34 because he might be over exaggerating, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. It's not as though we have a birth certificate in front of us. Anyway, we've been talking about this for a long time.
Yeah.
So this also leads us to nearing the end of our search for the imposter. Not that we're that close ultimately, but Vin feels as though it's this culmination. Alrianne has been cleared as a rioter, so she can't be it because she's an Allomancer. Clubs is cleared as a smoker. And Demu begins to feel like an even clearer target. We stalk Demu through the streets, questioning whether or not she should be burdened by seeking the truth. And so she leans into what Kelsier taught her and continues to follow on because she considers just dropping down and killing him without like knowing the proper answer. She arrives and finds that Demu is leading a meeting with people from the Church of the Survivor.
What a well done reveal. Like it is something that is perfectly like, it explains every weird interaction that we've had and every sort of strange observation that Vin has made in one sentence. Like it's perfect. So that was really cool to read.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that it is not only cool to read, but the entire scene that takes place inside the church, I think, is with all of the ska is fantastic. And sort of the conversation that he has and the way that he kind of preaches to the beliefs and sort of assuages those fears, right? And assuages the doubts specifically that they have about Ellen and Vin. There's just a lot of kind of nuance and depth that I think rolls into this moment that reveals Demu quotes character. You know, we don't necessarily have an answer to whether or not he is the imposter, but at the very least, he serves a function inside of this church to provide them with hope. Yeah. In a religious way. So
my initial read on this, before the reveal of like Ellen joining the church, my initial thought is that like him talking about Ellen specifically and how like they need to rally around him and like make sure that he is, since he was chosen by Kelsier to be king, he should be king. That like got me back on track with like, this guy's the Khandra. And like, he needs Ellen to stay in power in order to be useful in his position. Like that's where I was going with. That doesn't necessarily hold up on a second read through, but
I mean, I think even scrutinizing it, you know, it's tough to make that call. Yeah.
It doesn't fall apart on a second read through, but like, it's not as strong of a like conviction.
Yeah. I think, speaking of conviction, what did you make of his conversation with Vin after this?
Oh,
when she confronts him.
He was very bashful about it.
He seemed kind of ashamed, yeah.
And
bashful's better than ashamed, but yeah, bashful's closer.
But mostly because he understands, like the explanation that he gives is that he knows that it makes her uncomfortable. I don't know what to make of it. I really don't. He's been there for forever. He understands exactly what Kelsier was. And I don't want to discount feelings. And I think he truly does feel in some way the strength of Kelsier in his blade, making him better than what he was, than what he is.
Better than his blade, you know?
Yeah.
Strength in his blade. Cool.
So, I don't know. It's just irrational enough to be like, all right, you wouldn't fake that, you know?
Sure, yeah.
I don't know.
I guess the thing that's tough to pick apart here, right, is this is a faith based in a person who was just alive.
Yeah.
And someone who is doing real things and real deeds. And so there's this tough intersection of, okay, he was a man, he was fallible, and it doesn't feel like he's portrayed as fallible. Not to say that he didn't have some sort of intent by moving the sword and by, soothing and swinging him around and helping Damu in that moment.
He did.
Well, yeah, no, he explicitly did. But all that I mean is that it's not as though it was divine providence necessarily. There's nothing that makes him divine outside of people's belief that he is divine in this circumstance. And that's where the extension to, I think, his bashfulness is that of confronting Vin as the Lady Heir. And Vin's sort of, it's not quite malcontent, but like her just slightly negative deference to this whole thing, where she doesn't like associating with it. She doesn't like being associated with it as the Lady Heir and as this sort of next Messiah. That feels like such a stretch to say, but like the sort of next embodiment of an extension of Kelsier's will, or however you'd want to put that. She doesn't like that, and I think that's ultimately why he feels kind of bashful inside of these scenes, and why it also has a sort of disingenuous tone to her, because she knew Kelsier very intimately, and while faith in Kelsier is a good thing because having something to look for is what led to the downfall of the Empire, the rise of this new religion isn't necessarily a good thing, outside of it providing a hopeful lens to make sure that they don't go back to just sitting in servitude. Like that's why this is so tough to parse with the church in particular, the Church of the Survivor, is because without this, a lot, and without like Damu doing what he's doing, a lot of these people would probably just revert to old lives pretty easily.
Yeah, they would. I don't necessarily see the negatives of this church being like prevalent. I don't know.
What do you mean by the negatives of the church being prevalent?
Vin specifically talks later about them, I guess implies that with Ellen's endorsement, if he were to remain king, they would have a similar position as the Obligators, I think.
There is an implication there, potentially.
I mean, it was explicit.
I don't know if it's... I think she's just wondering it. It's not explicit in the way that... She's thinking it. Yes, yeah, that's explicit. Yeah, I'm saying that it's not explicit that that's what would happen. She's imagining it as a potential outcome.
Right. So from her perspective, it would be a negative. And I don't necessarily see that, especially considering like their entire point is following what Kelsier believed in. And that's what more or less and less as time goes on, but more or less that's what their driving force is, is Kelsier's vision.
And yeah, so it's definitely Kelsier's vision. And I think that this is just Vin's, again, ugly insecurity head or demon like rearing its head to some degree. I think that's what this is, again, because she's, for the most part of this section that we're reading this week, she's experiencing extreme doubt in a bunch of things and having a lot of kind of low points for the novel so far in her arc and in her journey. So I think it's fair to say that is driven from a negative expectation.
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
I don't disagree with you. Yeah, I totally get it. I think that she also finds this entire religion a little bit deceptive because it's based on Kelsier's miracles, which include things that are mostly just allomancy. It's mostly just the people that the Ska don't understand allomancy well enough. And yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess the core point that I wanted to ground in a little bit here is something that'll come up a little bit later with Vin and her relationship to the church and how she feels very used in the final chapter of the week. And I think that's because she doesn't want to be associated with it. Like, but she is and has to. And then, like Tin Will has her like use it as leverage at the dress shop. And, she doesn't want that.
Right.
Final question of this chapter. Do you believe that Damu is the Khandra?
I don't have a better answer.
Okay.
So for the sake of the prediction.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'll lock into that. Yes.
All right. Cool.
I'm not convinced, but it's my best guess.
Sweet. With that, we go into chapter 37. We start off here with logbook 450, or the logbook, excuse me, on page 452, which is, and so I come to the focus of my argument. I apologize. Even forcing my words into steel, sitting and scratching in this frozen cave, I am prone to ramble. Gives us a fucking apology. And then it's like, I'm rambling a bit in my metal. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we know you are, fucking dude. Like, Quan, we know that you're rambling. We just need some answers. Give us some answers.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So we start this chapter with inspection of the evidence and some further assertions of what we know about the Lord Ruler and the Ascension as divulged by Tindwyl. I find a funny footnote here that there aren't any books for the most part because all of it's stored in the metal of their metal mines. And so they're kind of indexing and like writing things down feverishly. I kind of imagine them like when they're going through their metal mines, like going like robot mode and just like locking up and like scanning their brains, right? And then like coming back. Being like really like, I don't know. I just imagine it a very jarring experience as they're like searching through, you know?
Yeah. It's a weird one to imagine, but it's one of those things that I just wouldn't have thought of without like the explicit mention of the fact that there's not a lot of books here. Yeah. Like I really wouldn't have, it wouldn't have come to mind, but it is kind of weird.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely clearly different, clearly a unique expression here. So it's just a fun note. And we also get a really lovely note within Sazed's perspective here, that of his feelings for Tindwyl. He's very timid, of course, in admitting these things. He's a eunuch and doesn't see himself as a man, and there's that whole problem. But Tindwyl replies with just a lovely comment of affection and deep appreciation for Sazed being the one man who stood against the Synod and their intent and plans, who actually didn't remain neutral in the face of it all, as Tindwyl might have if she'd went to the other armies, as we'd kind of discussed earlier. And at her prompting, you know, so she prompts him with the statement. I noted it over here, and I forgot to put it in the document. Give me an excuse.
Yeah.
And my heart just melts into a fucking puddle. Like that was it's such a good moment. It's such a good moment.
Yeah, man. I completely agree.
Yeah.
This is a shift in our knowledge of Tindwyl too, though.
Yeah.
And she seems to have changed since what we talked about before. Sazed sort of performing these duties with the refugees. And either that sparked a change in her disposition, or this is how she truly is and she needs to put on a face in front of other people. And she's like letting the veil down in front of Sazed now. So I'm not sure what the reality is.
I'm not so certain that it's not both, to be honest. I'm not so certain.
It could be both.
Yeah. To me, it feels like it's got elements of both of them, right? Like it's got components of all of that. So I would have trouble discerning, you know, saying that it's not a little bit of each, that she doesn't have that veil up, because it also felt like she dropped her veil when she was educating Vin, right? Like it felt like that was a very different perspective, and so that dropped. And I think that at the same time, she also was uncertain of whether to trust, like we were talking about just a couple of minutes ago, was uncertain of whether to trust that what Sazed was doing was worth it versus the sort of danger that he was putting other people's lives into, you know, versus the task that was assigned to him by the Synod.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's a part of it.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Aww. It's so cute. I love it. It's great. Mm-hmm. So anything else in Sazed Tindwyl? I think this is where we pretty much leave them for the week.
No, I think that covers it.
Yeah. They obviously talk about the book. They talk about the deepness. They kind of catch each other up on thoughts and details and begin to show that they would make great study partners. And as such, it feels like that's what we'll get from them in the future. But I really enjoyed the conversation on command that Elend and Ham share atop the city wall. One driven around what motivates them and the legacy that Kelsier's left them both. They discuss Elend still wearing the crown of a king and that of self-confidence and arrogance, and the fine line between the two. It's such a good, lofty, hefty conversation. And I think I've said this a lot this week, but I love this chunk and these like meaty character moments that we get here right before this end of this part. Yeah, I don't know. How'd this make you feel? How'd you feel about the convo? What'd you take from it?
I mean, I love the meaty character moments too, but I think I prefer action. But I don't know. These are important and these are great, and I wouldn't give them up for anything. But I don't know if they're my favorite compared to like the fucking fight scene we get later on.
Well, I mean, you gotta like tone things up, but the only reason you care about the risk of the fight scene is because you care about the characters.
Right. Yeah, they're symbiotic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I did love the initial comment from Ham. Like, you almost look like a king. And the explanation of what he actually meant there. Like it reads, and Elend takes it as subtle ribbing for like his current position, but turns out to be a little bit more wholesome than that. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I also enjoy that between the two of them. It's a fun little banter.
Mm-hmm. There's still more going on with Ham that I'm not sure what to make of.
Okay.
And I think it's Breeze, earlier on that like kind of made note of it, where he's really just not the same person that he used to be.
I feel like Ham even says some of that, right?
He does. So I'd like to dig in more of what's really causing that, if we can find some actual root. But we know that he's been cleared by Vin for using his pewter. So
yeah, right.
I don't know. Something's up with him.
But it's a thought. Yeah, not one to drop so readily.
Yeah.
The sort of final reflection of this chapter is that of the legacy that King Elend Venture might leave. And I think it's a really another great moment here, bouncing between kind of his philosophical core, his outright optimism, and his scholarship. And he finally lands on the thing that really makes him different as a king, as a leader. And that is, compared to everyone else around him, and historically and otherwise, it is his love and fascination with the fascination that grew into love of the Ska.
Yeah. I think we as readers understood this, but it's maybe not to the same. Maybe we are in the same position as Elend. It's good to see him come to that conclusion and really put a point on it beyond just the idea that he cares for the people that he rules. So maybe I felt like I understood that like his fascination with the Ska and his sort of scholarly pursuits of the Ska from the first book developed into this respect and love. But it's good to see that very explicitly put into words. Agreed.
Yeah, I think that it is like you said, it's something that we were aware of. But he even makes comment that when we were aware of it, he had almost viewed it in like an exotic sense and was more fascinated that way, in the sort of exoticism, and that was wrong versus viewing them as a person. And I think that's an important admission for him as a character, but also it's him finally acknowledging what makes him different, right? It's not something that we're unaware of necessarily, but it is him becoming self-aware enough to recognize that, not just, often you might be like shouting at characters being like, no, what makes you different is X. And it's like, and then they realize it in the 11th hour. This is, at the very least, he's realizing this much, much earlier. Unfortunately, it is actually too little too late, but
yeah,
So with that, we move into chapter 38, our final chapter of the week. So here we have the logbook. This is the problem. Though I believed in Alendi at first, I later became suspicious. It seemed that he fit the signs, true. But how can I explain this? Could it be that he fit them too well?
So this feels like it's setting up Elend for something. But I don't have enough to go on to like make a deeper comments than that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. All right. I really appreciate the shift in tone that Elend has at the beginning of this chapter. His demeanor shifts and recognizes these two sides of Vin that we've been talking about, and also apologizes that they haven't been able to spend that much time together. It ends, though, on a slightly bittersweet note. He's going to do something involving her reputation, and of course, this new doubt, kind of new and different doubt, floods Vin. Did you kind of see this coming? See this emotional reaction and sort of on your first pass?
First pass, what I saw coming was a formal public proposal to Alrianne.
Oh,
as like a sham wedding, but as something that would formally tie Ellen to Seth.
Wow, that's not a bad idea.
And that's what came to my mind, because it would really fuck with Vin, but you could see him promising that it wouldn't change anything between them. And you could see this being like a hasty, like, what the fuck are we going to do decision between him and Ham. Like, I don't know. That was my initial, like, holy shit, that's what's happening. And thankfully, I didn't have to wait that long to be proven wrong. But that's what I thought right away.
Yeah, that's a lot of, like, that's a reasonable doubt to hold there.
Yeah, and that is, like, I do have to add, I was heartbroken by that, like, thought process. Even though it didn't last long, I'm like, oh no,
this can happen to Finn. Yeah, don't do that to my Finn. Oh man, yeah. So we move from your crazed assumption and Vin's sort of, Vin's questioning as well, and sort of her. Again, this feels like a moment where Reen should be whispering in her ear, but isn't. Yeah. It feels like it's one of those moments, but it does have that similar kind of dark tone, to the point of where she's literally whispering kind of Reenish things to herself, like clever and other things. Like, she's kind of embodying that emotional response in an odd way. But that happens, of course, when the meeting begins. Seth declines the opportunity to speak. Ellen is going to follow him up, and we see Vin clearly tracing out Ellen's plan as it comes together. It was as Zane had said. She was a knife, a different kind of knife, but still a tool. And she is once again wielded as this knife, but this time is a political instrument, hoping to use her to sway the crowd without really taking the time to seek her consent. And in the way that this is not a wedding proposal, but it's instead him saying that he has joined the Church of the Survivor, of which Vin is sort of the matriarchal figurehead. Not really a figurehead. She's more of a mythical. I don't know. There's something. Yeah,
there's something there, and I think that's the crux of my thought process on this. Is that there's something there.
Well, she feels guilt, and she feels weird about it.
But I feel like there's too much weight being placed on Vin herself in this, and this is really it's an alliance with the church, and that church is primarily worshiping Kelsier. And Vin
but they're putting a lot of weight on Vin inside of the story.
Yes, they are. I mean, she's the lady heir, and therefore she's going to be an important aspect of this. But this is in line, everything that the church is speculating and worshiping about Vin is entirely in line with what she believes in anyway.
Yeah, but it's doesn't
pressure. It's external pressure.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change anything about her or anything about anything. I guess I don't quite understand why this is as big of a deal as everybody is making this out to be.
I get a sort of Truman Show effect about it, right? Where she's basically being followed around and not necessarily hounded, but because she is people's religious system, her importance to them is far greater than it should be. Yeah, sure, she took down the Lord Ruler. That's a big deal. Someone should be idolized for those kind of things. But a sort of a religion that sprung up from her mentor, and now she is filling that place that he voided when his spirit showed up, is a lot of pressure. And while it doesn't immediately necessarily change her actions, she's uncomfortable with it to begin with. She does not like that this has sprung up around her. She doesn't want, directly to be associated with the church. She ultimately knows that she can't sway the opinion and that she thinks it's a good thing for these people to have hope. She just doesn't think that it should be in her in this way.
Yeah. It just, I guess the other thing about it in my head is that it feels like this is a regression from the progress that was made between Vin and the church and the congregations throughout the previous couple sections.
Well, yeah, because she was arguably forced into those moments. I don't think that she was making progress so much as she was doing the political thing. Because she was told by Tindwyl to go out there and speak with
But also the conversation with her and Demu.
Yeah. But that's just
that wasn't
Demu.
Yeah, but it's still revolving around the church. And she put herself in that position. Like she wasn't forced into that one.
Well,
but
no, she wasn't forced
like,
into the conversation, but she was confronting him about it.
Yeah, but she seemed to gain an understanding of what everything was about with it.
Yes, like the miracles of which she clearly disagrees with.
She disagrees with it, but she understands it, and she understands their importance. And this feels like a regression from that. It feels like it feels like she has no understanding of them anymore.
Well, I don't think that she has no understanding of them, the church. I think that she is shocked and blown away that Elend is now going to is effectively using them as a tool, is using the church as a tool, and thereby extension to win a political game, and thereby extension using Vin as a tool.
Yeah,
because
I guess
ultimately
that's that jump that I don't quite agree with. Using the tool.
How can you? Okay, explain.
Using the church as a tool necessarily means that he's using Vin as a tool. Like that is a stretch.
He's directly connecting with their Messiah, effectively.
The Messiah is Kelsier.
Not entirely. This is where I was trying to make sure that we laid that groundwork earlier, because she is the Lady Heir. She's the inheritor of the title. She is the heir to the survivor in that way.
And all of her actions are being compared to Kelsier, even within the church.
Yeah, right.
Right. That doesn't make her the Messiah. That makes her...
No, it means that she's like the second coming. Like that's the way that she's being treated.
Okay. Fair.
Otherwise, they wouldn't like sit around and like wait for her word. Like that's At worst, she's an apostle, I guess, but she's way more than an apostle.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, I'm with you. A little
there's
both.
A stark.
I get where you're coming from. I still think it's not as 1-to-1 as it seems to be like made out to be, but it's not as disconnected as I was trying to argue it was. Does that make sense?
When you say 1-to-1, are you saying the sort of
like
Messiah
using the church as a tool means he's using Vin as a tool?
Well, I think he is using Vin as a tool because for multiple reasons, right? Like here's the extra step on top of what we've said. The reason that he's really using Vin as a tool is because he also has a direct connection with Vin, and now he also has a direct connection with the church of which worships Vin to a degree.
Right.
And so because he's effectively in relations with their, I don't know, we've used the term Pope and other things like that before to describe these kind of things, but with like a live inheritor of the title, Lady Heir.
I think Second Coming makes sense. I don't know of a better term for it.
Yeah, I can't think of a better one either. The living embodiment of the ideals. I don't know. It's something like that. He's more directly associating. Like this is a marriage that she didn't agree to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just something that she was already connected to anyway.
Yeah, but she didn't necessarily want to be connected. You know, like that's the trouble, is that like she ultimately accepted her connection. And I think that's where we're getting a little bit disconnected on the regression, is she's accepted her connection with the church because she can never disassociate with Kelsier. There's no way for her to, right now, there's no path for her to absolve herself of that connection. But that connection didn't need to be made explicit as well with Elend and suddenly make him an apostle to her, or, you know, like an apostate. Right. That's where it gets... that's
fair.
A little bit trickier. That's where I really see Vin being very frustrated. And I think that this is so important to the reason that she ultimately is so angry in this moment. And I think it's totally justified.
Yeah.
Like basically what you're saying is that you're using me for political gain and you didn't ask my permission and didn't consult me beforehand, regardless of what it is. It could be her like going out and like offering for her to go kill 1,000 people. Right? It's still, you know, still a tool. It's just it's a different application.
That's fair.
It's winning at any cost and not consulting her. And she probably would have been okay with it. I think she actually would have, within reason, been okay with it if they would have had the conversation, but they didn't.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think she would have been fine.
Yeah. I know that I'm the one getting uppity about this, but I imagined that conversation going longer than, yeah, you're right. Because I think it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Because then the rest of this is a really cool action scene.
That's true. It's a very cool action scene.
Yes, yes. Of course, we move on from this moment. None of the votes are taken quite yet, but Vin, inside of this scene and kind of after the speech, is noticing people kind of wandering around the edges, and an assassin shows their face, and Vin has to become the other kind of knife, the protective one. And she even growls that Vin notices inside of his perspective before she begins to disassemble the attackers.
I like the terminology, first of all.
I think it makes a ton of sense.
It does. Going into this was another one of those paranoia monologues from Vin's perspective that we talked about earlier. And I really appreciated the way that sort of ends with something along the lines of like, why are those men moving around on the outside? And then I think it switches to Elend.
Switches to Elend for like a page and a half. Yeah.
Yeah. And then switches back.
It does.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
It's like a page and a half. And when we switch to Elend, it's the end of his speech. And then we switch back when the attackers are kind of, really revealed. Yeah.
I'm really liking how Branderson like plays with perspectives here, because it's not the same structure that we've been used to of like large chunks of perspective isolated. This is like almost playing
full
with
POV
omniscience
chapters versus
yeah. It's almost playing with omniscience.
Yeah,
but without dipping into that.
It's third person limited, but at the same time, it's flipping. In theory, most authors would use like asterisks to break up like different perspective flips and stuff like that. We obviously have big text space or chapters, but he does it so quickly in these moments where he like flips perspectives that like you wouldn't want a page chapter from Ellen's perspective. That would be unsatisfying. It'd feel really dumb to like flip and have a chapter, which is why it's great to have like this little like line break page and a half styling.
And it feels like it feels natural. And I don't know. I don't know enough about like writing to know if this is like bad form or good form or just kind of mastery of perspective, but it feels very good.
If you liked it, it's good form.
Okay, cool.
That's kind of the truthfully, that is more often than not the rule, is if it works, it's good. If it doesn't work and you broke rules, if it doesn't work and you broke rules, then it's not good.
I like corn dogs, so I don't know where that leads me.
I don't even know where that entered this conversation.
But corn dogs, kind of bullshit. They're not good, but I like them. So does that make them good?
I don't think corn dogs are bullshit, but you like them, so it makes them good to you. Yeah, this is that whole thing where like there's a big meta argument that exists inside of the writing community, which is never write in second perspective, right? Never write saying like you are doing this, especially if you're within a character's head and like putting you and I in a character's head, right? And saying like you're walking down the hallway and you have this conversation, you look over to her and you feel. Second person is generally like shunned inside of the writing community for various reasons. However, there have been a couple of very successful books over the last 2 decades that have been in second person where everyone was like, fuck, we were wrong. And it's because it's done well that it makes a world of difference, if that makes sense. So if it worked, no one's gonna give a shit as long as you stay consistent, Yeah.
Cool.
So there's my explanation for the reasonable third person perspective page flips. It's also generally a YA thing. YA books do this more frequently. That's not a universal rule, but like most of the books that I grew up reading, when they had multiple characters, they would sometimes do that. So
okay.
Yeah. King does it sometimes, but he generally does more than a page and a half. with his characters, because all of his books are fucking tomes. So anyway, so Elend, of course, tries to fend off one of the thugs with his dueling cane, is easily blown back, Vin jumping in to protect him and doing her best to preserve the life of those in the crowd. That limitation obviously hinders her ability to deal with coin shots and lurchers quickly, but it leads to a very incredibly, almost like a dance-like scene, right?
Yeah, she still gets to benefit from the fact that she could spray coins at any moment. So, like, it forces them into a position where they can protect themselves from that attack. So that's a positive, which is great. But despite, like, just ignoring everything, what a fucking machine Vin is.
Yeah.
Fucking brutal.
Absolutely. She is absolutely incredibly destructive inside of this moment. You know, she burns Dralaman at one point. She burns Dralaman twice in this fight, right?
She does.
Yeah, so the first time she uses it to burn out Pewter, and the second time she also uses it to burn out Pewter, right?
Yeah, so this is something that I actually really appreciate from Branderson here, because he explicitly mentions it, and it's something that hadn't been mentioned before and is counter to what I understood about Dralaman, in that Dralaman doesn't entirely get depleted when used.
Right. The metal that's being burned does. And this is where it gets really explicit with that.
Yeah, he explicitly says that it doesn't use all of the Dralaman, which was new to me, but I like rules, man. I really like rules, so I'm appreciative of him not just of him recognizing that it wasn't clear and not just adding, or not just kind of going through with this because it feels counter to what I assumed the rules to be. So I don't know. It's verbose, but
no, I think it's good, and I think we'll definitely get to it, especially when we get to the moment, you know, where it all goes south. But she obviously is using all of these metals. She burns up her pewter with the Dralaman push, and the lurcher rips away a bottle of backup metals that was tucked inside of her dress sleeve, because she always has to be prepared for these kind of things. Orsor then jumps and bites a thug and presents a hidden vial from his flesh for Vin, just like separating that so that she can pull it out and drink it. And this is so cool. But then on top of that, she brutally kills a thug in front of her boyfriend, killing it by sticking her finger through his eye and stabbing a dagger into his chest, like poking through into his brain, like, and there's like the squishes, and it's just
So I'm going to address the point with Orsor here. He's able to attack humans but not kill them. Is that the point?
I believe that would be
okay.
The deal.
Like, I couldn't remember specifically what the...
You know, he can't kill. Yeah.
He can't kill them. I thought, for some reason, like, while I was reading this, I thought he couldn't harm humans.
No. Kill.
Kill. Is just kill.
Yep.
So could he... What if he accidentally kill someone?
As stated, I think it said cannot be ordered to kill.
It does say that.
I think that's right.
But also, later on, it says the contract forbids Khandra from killing humans.
Correct. Yes, I believe that is the contradiction that you said it a couple of times.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, right. So he's able to hurt them, but not kill them. So Khandra could be torturers.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Keep that in mind.
Keep that in the back of your head.
Yeah, I had kind of lapsed on my understanding of what the rules were for that.
Sure. Yeah.
But I didn't know if it mattered anyway for us. Like, is he beholden to the contract at all anymore? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That said, squish.
Oh no. I can just imagine that eye going out. That's so unfortunate for everyone involved. So obviously the fight is going very well for Vin for the most part. She's burning through metals, and she ultimately at one point breaks the thug's leg. He falls on the ground. She then goes and deals with the coin shots, of whom are trying to deal with Elend, who's holding them off with a dueling cane, doing exceptionally well compared to how she expected him to be doing, considering his lack of experience. But he's had some training under his belt now. I think we get a timeline clarification here too, of like 2 months or something like that. Anyway, not overly important, but, or maybe it's something like 2 months ago he couldn't have done that, but now he's doing better. Something like that. But she is then, after they dispatch those, she is then assaulted by the thug she was fighting earlier and who she had neglected to fight off. She then has to burn that duralumin and launch through his head, headbutting his skull clean off, smashed into little bits. Oh my God.
So fucking metal.
This is insane.
Oh, holy shit, dude.
This is extreme. Like, this is the most brutal kill in the series so far.
Yeah, this is horrifying. This is something that's like cartoonish almost in gore.
This is like The Boys moment, you know? Like, this is totally one of those explodey head moments of, like you said, almost cartoonish gore, but it also, it makes perfect sense. It's very believable, but it's just like, dude's head was pulverized from a headbutt.
Yeah. So before she, like, while she's being strangled, and I think after she recognizes that, like, this is the one that she broke his leg and, like, had lost track of, she makes mention that, like, she recognizes him from something.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's a thug. And there were thugs dressed as servers for Set.
Yep.
So that's my current theory. This was one of Set's thugs.
Okay.
But it's going off of basically nothing.
All right.
Contextually.
Yeah, but I mean, that is kind of the question that Vin has. They don't have anything to pick up and identify him with, though.
That's true. But... But she'll wake up and potentially continue that thought process.
Right. I just mean, it's not as though she has a, hell, probably don't even have like molars to go on.
You think she pulverized their molars?
Oh yeah. This dude is a pancake. This dude's head is a pancake that was...
It was duralumin.
Like, it's a duralumin pewter burn. Like, it's full force,
It's fucking ridiculous, is what it is. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, because he was burning pewter, which means he should have been able to resist it and take it, Like, that's the other part of this, is like he was reinforced because she couldn't fully push off of him. She expected him to like flinch more when she like jumped on him. And that's where it's like the disadvantage. And that's really the only big difference. Oh, yeah. So Vin, having fully burned her pewter and taken care of everyone in the room, passes out. This leaves us with Ellen left in absolute horror of what he's just experienced, really kind of his first battle. But I think he also walks away with this with kind of a newfound fear of what a Mistborn is truly capable of, recalling the horses from Breeze's escape and how they were escape and also how they were thrown into the air. And all of this being done to protect him makes it even more disturbing to him. He feels, I don't want to like fully commit to changed, but he feels in abject shock and doesn't really know how to process this. And I think it's in a negative way. What do you think?
So I think it's too early to tell what he thinks so far, based on what we've seen. He's barely experienced any fighting at all in his life, let alone this gruesome of a death. And the fact that it's at Vin's hand or head.
All right, yeah. Continue.
Fuck. Is irrelevant at this point. Mm-hmm. We'll see going forward.
I don't know if it's fully irrelevant. It's still what she's capable of,
It's what she's capable of, but I think that maybe not irrelevant, but primarily, I think he is in shock of what it's like to see someone die and die horribly. And there will probably be lingering connections between that and Vin, but I think that will be not a huge hurdle for their relationship. It'll be a hurdle, but I think mostly it'll be because I think it's primarily his inexperience with war that's causing this reaction, not Vin being a Mistborn badass.
I would agree with you that it's wanton destruction. I would just say there's a layer of this that it is also at Vin's hand, right? Like it is just a general reaction to that. But I think that's where he clarifies that it's not just that this is what a Mistborn can do, but this is what Vin did to protect him, right?
Okay.
And that's sort of that differentiation. I agree with you in conceit that this is likely maybe even a bit of an overreaction. But at the same time, he's clearly got something to grapple with. How extreme or how far that goes, we can't really source out, to your point.
Right. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Whew. What a magnificent action scene, though. Like a
oh yeah,
fuck.
Super cool.
It's so good, so good. Vin dancing around, throwing daggers, grabbing coins out of the air, pushing them out, saving people as much as she can, and not a single person killed outside of the assassins, which is miraculous.
Yeah, it is
by all accounts.
That's fucking crazy.
Considering all that she was doing to even protect like noblemen, assemblymen that were around, and everything else. So yeah. Of course, we move from this critical moment to that of the upcoming vote, where the assembly is very much in knowledge that if they were to have to postpone this vote for any reason, then Elend would remain king. However, they do decide to pull up and do that vote right after this sort of brutal moment. We accumulate the votes into a deadlock. And with a couple of votes for Set, a majority of the votes for Penrod, and several votes for Elend, and then they ask a question about changing their vote. The only two people who voted for Set ask about changing their vote. Elend and Norden share an exchange and a glance in which Norden knows the law, as does Elend, and in this moment and in this test of character, not that I think Norden would have supported him either way, and that seems to be the implication.
Yeah.
Elend decides to be righteous and honest and tells them that yes, the law is written so that they can change their vote, leaving Penrod the newly elected king of Luthadel. Sorry.
Yeah, no, yeah. For somebody who writes and wrote the rules so carefully, this seems like a colossal fuck up, and not an oversight, but a fuck up, because this is an explicitly written clause. Seeing that your candidate doesn't have a chance to win anymore and wanting to change your vote as a result of that is the exact reason why this shouldn't be allowed. Like, straight up, the position that they're in right now is something that should have been foreseen. And he wrote a clause that allowed it to happen. He didn't ignore, he didn't oversee, it wasn't an overlook. He wrote a clause in that allowed them to change their vote, but only once. That's a fuck up, if you ask me.
I don't think it's so specific to say that he actually wrote a clause that said that they could change their vote only once. It's more, it's not that explicit. It's close. But it's more of an admission.
There's a clause that allows them to change their vote once.
It's close. Just 1 second. I'll double check. The clause was rather oblique. Norton was probably the only other one in the room who knew who knew the law well enough to interpret it. Nodded slightly, still meeting Elend's eyes. He would hold his tongue. Yes, the law allows for you to change your vote, Lord Hebron. You may only do so once, and you must do so before the winner is declared. Everyone else has the same opportunity. So, make sure I'm not remembering the word oblique wrong. So it's a slant on the law. It's not a direct interpretation. You can change your vote before a final decision is reached.
Yeah. That seems fair if they're not progressing through the votes verbally, one by one. If it's a hidden...
Well, I think that's naturally a flawed system, of course. Saying your vote out loud is also
it's really
inherently
fucking stupid.
Flawed system. Yeah.
But this position that he's founded himself in is the reason why that shouldn't have been the case. And he's finding that, but that's something that I think he would have noticed as a problem.
What one would, yeah, I totally agree. You would think that there are a couple of different issues here, right? Elend wrote a lot of these laws with a bunch of scholars, and this is completely, I think it's still an oversight, regardless of however you decide. It's not quite textually written exactly as to say, like, yes, you can revote just once, but it's like you can change it within reason before a decision is made. It's an oblique read on the rule, right? It's an interpretation like the Constitution is in various ways. The sort of point being is that there are so many people that went over these things. There are so many people that probably know about them, that worked on them with Ellen, that this massive flaw makes it in. And my only rational thought about how something like this sneaks into a document is because there's been 1,000 years of oppression and there hasn't been a need for another system like this. So, like, there's no test subjects. There's nothing to really like look back on to assemble something that would be perfect. Yeah. But that's still frustrating from a viewer's point of view, from a reader's point of view. So I don't disagree with you. I think that it is a colossal fuck up. But I think the point of the fuck up is more to emphasize Ellen's honesty, not his incapability at writing law. You know? Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I agree. I think from a dramatic standpoint, I think it would have been interesting if the other person, like if they split, if they went one and one,
like no, yeah,
no.
If
the two, because it still would have been a majority to Penrod. Either way,
65%, I think, is what they needed. Which, I can't
thought
remember.
It was 2/3. Yeah, it was 2/3.
65%, yeah. Basically,
he got 20, or he got 17, and 16 would have been 2/3.
Got it. Yeah.
So even if like one changed to Ellen instead, it would have been, I don't know.
It doesn't matter. It is also
doesn't matter.
Yeah. I agree with you that would have added a little bit of drama. And I also think the entire reading the answers out loud is intended to provide the same sort of drama, right? Versus like writing it on slips, which I think would be, then again, I think about it, and like our Congress does the same thing. They don't write secret votes. Everything's public. So
yeah,
you say yay. You like go up and announce your vote. So
they shouldn't. It's a dumb way to do it.
Yeah. But I think the reason that our government does it is because of transparency for voters. But
you could vote all at once electronically at this point. At this point in our system, you could vote electronically and go announce your vote later.
Yeah.
For the sake of drama.
And
if you really want to do that. But so it's recorded, and like you voted without knowing the already like determined outcome.
Right. Which I think is the sort of the danger here, is that the fact that they even knew that there was a 2-vote swing potential is what really fucks Ellen over in the first place. So
yeah,
because they knew that their vote wasn't going to count. Like it
was, but it did.
It would have counted. Yeah,
it already did matter.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it was very important. In fact, it would have let Ellen continue to be king. Yep. But of course, I think it's that character beat of honesty that matters the most in this section. Obviously, I love the conversation that this gets, because it's like, motherfuck. Because you just want Ellen to win. You just want Ellen to win. But at the same time, Ellen's winning cannot compromise his beliefs and what he wants to stand for as an image. And now he has to stand as something different, you know? Like what's he going to do now? You know, often I think of this kind of section and this sort of vote and everything else in the same sort of way. And even this entire chapter sans the assassination bit of the scene in the Senate in Star Wars. I think it's the second one, or rather Attack of the Clones. It's not actually this, whatever, who gives a shit. I think it's Attack of the Clones. It might be Revenge of the Sith. But the line that Queen Amidala says, or Senator Amidala says, "So this is how liberty dies, to thunderous applause." And,
yeah.
Obviously, ending this week with a Star Wars quote is a bit odd compared to how we normally talk about this, but
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a somber end to the section. Like him just taking the crown off and putting it on the mantle, saying, "I think you might need this."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that final line is so good too. He nodded to Ham, then left without looking back at the men who had discarded him. All right. Well, that is the end of part 3, King, rather, which is so good. How'd you feel about this week on the whole? How did you feel about it?
I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. It was compelling, thought-provoking, emotion-swinging. It was a really, really well-written section.
Cool. Well, with that, we'll roll into PJ's predictions. But just before that, the next section is called Knives. So you can imagine some context and connotations there based on what we've been talking about. So here, I had read through half of them. I just want to make sure this isn't pulling the man outside. Wild prediction here. What do you make there? Nope, nothing there. Stuff in from the tree, promised. PJ believes that Alran is a Khandra.
Based on what we know about Khandra, that is no longer true.
Yeah, fucking drink.
Cheers.
Cool. There are so many things that are left on this list of predictions that we have yet to go inside of the novel, right? And we added another one this week. Literally, folks, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 predictions that are just sitting here waiting to abuse us at the end of one of these episodes. Yeah. With that, we would generally move into last week's question. However, because of the sort of recording nature and everything that tried to prevent us from being able to do this episode, we did not pull answers for last week's question because we didn't have time. With that, though, we're going to re-ask the same question because this is a great week to ask this question as well. I want your favorite political turn of misfortune in a story. So talking about backstabbing in a court, talking about any sort of foul play going on in the background, being voted out. Give me your political drama in your favorite series. So, perfect. With that, next week, we are going to be reading chapters 39 through 42. It's kind of a short week next week after this week's 76-page section. So 56 pages or so. So 39 through 42. So that's where we'll leave you for this week.
Thank you, as always, to our producers, Tim and Andrew, for helping us keep our show's lights on. Check out all the links in the show notes. You can find our schedule, Patreon, previous episodes, website, and social media accounts all in one very convenient location.
And also, you should be able to start checking out our drinks more often on the website as well. Make sure you give us a follow on Instagram and Twitter. We post a lot of stuff there, including some giveaways. And I think we'll probably do one in May again. I think we haven't really fully worked out, but we want to do something a little bit,
a
little bit different.
We'll do
something soon. With that, so you can find us on Twitter and Instagram, as I mentioned, at Words Whiskey Pod on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Reddit. You can send us an email with your answer to the question of the week, any comments or feedback or anything like that you want to send us at wordsandwhiskeyshow@gmail.com. And also you can support us on our Patreon at patreon.com/wordsandwhiskey. We have a number of things going on there, some fun shows that we release, and some of those will be coming public pretty soon. So It'll be a good time. Beyond that, if you're listening to us on whatever podcatcher you do, if they've got a rating system, leave us in any podcast you like a rating. It greatly impacts our searchability, and I can already tell you that it has boosted our search rating enormously inside of Spotify. So definitely get those in.
Do it. Thank you so much for your support. It means the world to us, and we will see you next week.
See you next week, folks.